I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on March 13th, 2020. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have any questions during this live webcast, we do have a chat room. There's a link available there. That'll take you to a page that's got the chat room in it. Love to have you in it. If you have questions after the fact, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. If you're on YouTube right now, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That way you get notified whenever we publish anything new. And if you want to listen to this as a podcast on any podcast player, just search Gallup Webcasts and you will find Call to Coach. Paul Walters is our host today. Paul's a workplace consultant here at Gallup. And Paul, great to have you back for part 3 in this series.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Jim.
What are we going to talk about today? Obviously the third conversation, but give us some background on what we've covered so far.
Yeah, so I'll do a quick 2-minute overview of what we've covered so far. So in part 1, we talked about the history of performance management systems, where they came from. Then we talked about why they were ineffective and not working, and why a lot of companies are moving away from them. And then we've talked about the shift from Gallup's approach to this and our recommendations, which is shifting from what we call the performance management realm to performance development, which is being intentional around developing your people every single day and giving them opportunities to learn and grow. And then with that performance development, if you were listening to the first parts, we talked about the 3 frameworks, or the 3 components of the framework around this, which is to establish expectations, continually coach, and then create accountability. And within that framework are 5 conversations. So in part 1, we talked about the role and relationship orientation, which falls under that established expectations bucket. In part 2, we talked about the quick connect, which falls into the continual coach part of the framework. And then today, for part 3, we're going to talk about the third conversation, which is the check-in conversation, which also falls into that continual coach framework, part of the framework. Parts 4 will be the fourth conversation, which is the developmental coaching, which also falls into continually coach conversation. Then part 5 in the future will be the progress review conversation, which is the 5th one, that falls into the create accountability component of that framework. So again, we've covered role and relationship orientation, quick connect in part 2. Now part 3, we are going to dive into the check-in. Would you like me to just launch in, Jim?
Yeah, and let me just say for folks who might be reeling, like all of a sudden, they're like, oh, that's so much information available in our book, It's the Manager. So if you want to go back, a lot of the information we're pulling is from our book, It's the Manager. So if you want to go in there, available, just check it, look for the 5 coaching conversations. That is there. And
let me also give a shout out again to that re-engineering performance management white paper we have out there. It's online, it's free, really well done by Ben Wiegert and Jim Harder. So that's out there and available to you, and would recommend you read that document. There's a lot of really good information in there that outlines everything that we're saying here, but takes it to a little bit deeper level.
We did, if you want the short version of that, we did a webcast with Ben. If you like listening to it, we did a webcast late last year with the same title. And so you can find that as well on our Call to Coach channel. As we get started, I want to ask you the difference. I think it's the check-in and the quick connect get confused a little bit. So as you explain it, talk about maybe how they're a little bit different.
Yeah, so again, a reminder that the quick connect is really a quick hit with your employees. What are you working on? How you doing? How can I support you? That's the purpose of it. The check-in is a little bit more detailed. So I think in the quick connect, you do it minimum once a week, maybe every day if you're able to do it, if that's what your people want. The check-in is a little bit more formal. I think of this as your one-on-one sit-down meeting with your employees. Now, if your employees are remote, that's obviously over video chat or something like that, or over the phone. But if you can do it in person, that's great. Do that. But it's sitting down with your people for maybe an hour or so, and it's different in that you are going to a depth that you don't go in with the quick connect. The check-in is, we're actually going to check in to see where we're at with our goals. Are we making progress on what we need to accomplish this year or this month. It's possibly realigning our priorities. Like, Jim, I know you've been working on this. I just got some note from leadership that they're elevating this project. So are you able to pivot and sort of put your other project on hold and prioritize this one for the next couple weeks? So it's talking about that, helping them realign what those priorities might look like. And maybe they're a little bit confused about priorities. So this is your chance as a manager to help them understand what the priorities are, because oftentimes I think managers in their head are very clear about what someone's priorities are, but we're not always good at articulating it in a way that someone fully understands what the priority should be. It also is addressing barriers to performance. So if, Jim, there's something getting in the way of your success, what can I do to help you? I want to be here as a resource for you. Okay, now that I know this is a barrier, let me see what I can do on my end to remove those barriers from you, to help you set you up for success. I also think it's celebrating successes. And that's critical. So it's spending time actually saying, you were a rock star here, really great work, nice job, I appreciate what you did. Now, oftentimes managers feel the need to couple a success with what someone can be doing better. Now, I think it makes sense, and it's okay if you're going to have a conversation of how, and you would do it during these check-in conversations where someone can improve on something. So if you have that conversation, it's okay to tag in there hey, you're really great at here, you're rocking it here. Hey, I would tweak this a little bit. Here's where you can make it better, right? It's okay to do that conversation. But you also need to have those check-in conversations that celebrate successes only. Because what tends to happen is, if you tell me these good things and then you follow it up with a bad thing or something I need to work on, suddenly those good things are gone and I'm just focused on the negative thing. So I'm not saying you don't do that. I'm saying make time where the conversation can just include successes and doesn't have anything to do with what they might need to work on or where they're failing in their performance.
Sometimes that's perceived too as you're just sugarcoating. Yeah, you got something hard to
Right.
say, and now you're
Yeah.
sugarcoating it, right?
Yep.
And sometimes I think good to separate those out. And
It is.
there's learning opportunities, and then there's celebrating success, right?
Yeah, and I think you start to anticipate it. Oh, great, Jim's saying something nice to me.
Yeah,
Something's on his mind that he's going to ping me with. Yeah.
yeah.
I also, so in addition to celebrating successes, I think it's also about building a stronger partnership with that person. So fostering that relationship with that person during that check-in conversation. So that's a big thing. We know that the best managers have really good relationships with their people. It's also about providing timely feedback and coaching. Oftentimes, we don't provide feedback in the moment on someone's performance. And when we wait to provide that feedback, it feels more punitive. But if you're doing it more in the moment or more frequent, it feels like it's developmental versus being punitive. So again, that's really the whole point of what the check-in should be about. 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes people want it once a week. I would recommend at least once a month, probably 2 times a month. And again, it's to discuss successes, realign and prioritize expectations, and provide that timely feedback, along with removing some of those barriers to success. So really, in a nutshell, that's what a check-in is. And I will say one more thing about it. I remember before I joined Gallup, watching a video of Benjamin, who was going to be my go-to at the time, and he said specifically there's a difference between checking in with someone and checking up with someone, checking up on someone. And I've never forgotten that, right? A check-in is a positive experience. Checking up is, I don't trust you to do your work, so I'm here to check up on you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good way to separate that. And I think oftentimes, this is where in the check-in level, I think this is where managers have to be the most intentional about making these happen, because they're, the performance, the performance pieces, the pay pieces, those are going to come. Like, they're going to get mandated, they're going to be dictated in some cases. Some organizations are going to plan those out. The quick connect is easy because that's happening as part of kind of a daily or a weekly routine of sort. You're building those things in. These check-ins can get really lost in the wash.
Yeah.
And I think managers need to be the most intentional. Coaches, you have an opportunity. This is where, if your managers are struggling in their management, this check-in is probably where you start. Like, ask them, hey, how purposeful are you being about these check-in conversations? Because they are performance related, right? If you're saving all your performance for the annual performance review, right? To your point, we talked about this in part one. You can't, that you're surprising them, or you're biased. You're
Yeah.
basing it on the last month as opposed to this being a continual quality conversation, right?
That's spot on. And I love how you said that these can be sort of pushed to the side, right? We're busy. I have my own things to execute on. You send a very real and tangible message to your people when you postpone their one-on-one with them, right? You cancel it, you postpone because you're too busy. It's saying, I'm not a priority to you. Right. So it's really key that you schedule those meetings and you fight tooth and nail to reserve that time for that person so that they get the right messaging that you are my priority. Everything else is secondary.
Paul, we have 4 and 5 still coming up. Excited about those.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this as a podcast, they're probably already there for you. So just keep listening. And if not, we'll be back. If you're listening live, we'll be back next week. Make sure you get signed up for those as well. Any other final thoughts, Paul?
No, I'm good. Just talk to your people and get excited for part 4 and 5 coming up. Thank you.
Coaches, get your managers excited about the check-in.
Yeah.
Like this is the hardest part, I think, the hardest part about managing. And most managers avoid it. And so you got to get them doing this. Want to remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available. Now on Gallup.com, we've got a bunch of articles out there. But if you want to go right to the strengths materials, Gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. And we have tons of material out there available for you on this. If you want to, we did full transcriptions, or we will be doing in the future full transcriptions for this webcast, and the links to the reperforming or the re-engineering performance management. If I could say it, it's hard to say fast,
It does.
right?
Yeah, it does.
The link to the YouTube video on with Ben Weger, those will all be in the transcripts and available for you. So if you're wondering what this is, head out, grab the transcript, and those links will be available for you as well. If you have any questions, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. If you want to see future events that are coming up, I mentioned, we record these live, and if you'd like to be at the live recording sessions, it's more fun that way. Go to gallup.eventbrite.com. Join us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/called-to-coach. And if you want to join us on LinkedIn, again, these links will all be in the show notes. Head out to Clifton Strengths trained coaches. You don't have to be necessarily trained to do that, but we'll let you in. Want to thank you for joining us today, Paul. Have a great rest of the day. With that, we'll say thanks, everybody.